Even though baseball is America's pastime, it has a lot of racist history, often pushed away in hopes it would be forgotten. Many know the story of Jackie Robinson and how he was the first African American in Major League Baseball, but very few know the backstory of how Jackie and other legends like Larry Doby and Roy Campanella integrated into the major leagues from the Negro League. Even some of baseball's biggest fans that know where these legends came from don't quite understand the impact their integration left on baseball and America as a whole. Their integration into the major league was an unprecedented step towards equality in sports. Today, even though we've moved past different leagues divided by race and pay gaps driven strictly on the color of our skin, there is still racial tension in baseball we hope to shed light on. When integration of African American players into the MLB started to happen, lots of players were almost stolen from the Negro League teams they played for. Owners were stripped of their best players and their teams started to crumble. As these teams fell, some areas like Kansas City were hurt economically. The team employees lost their jobs and local black business owners saw a decrease in their business from the game time influx of traffic to their pubs and diners they were used to. Black citizens would not have cared to see their jobs lost if they saw a step towards racial equality with their black baseball players. However, this was not the case. Once black players got on the MLB teams, their pay was extremely lower from their white counterparts. Players who put up better numbers than some of the All-Stars were still paid less than half of what they made. Not only that, African American players were often heckled and harassed by the stands, leaving them in not only a pay gap difference, but also a hostile work environment. Communities were affected in different ways by integration. African American fans who used the Negro League as a rallying point were ecstatic that their players made it into the Major League. This happiness quickly faded, however, when they watched the same players they cheered for get harassed on the field by white fans. These same communities started to get hit financially also. Baseball and business were being closed in on by white owners. Negro League teams lost their players for little to nothing to white owners of MLB teams, and black business owners were being forced to compete with the white business owners after the communities started to merge together. Many black business owners and their employees were left without jobs. These people flooded the cities looking for work and triggered white flight, sending whites to the suburbs. People often try to push negative history to the wayside. And without doing research, many, myself included, had no idea the Negro League even existed. So we decided to ask students around the University of Kentucky what they knew about the Negro League, baseball's integration, and their opinion on if racism was still prevalent in baseball today. Okay, before we get started, why don't you go ahead and tell me your name, your grade, your major, and where you're from.
My name is Brooklyn Fraze. I'm a freshman. I'm majoring in business, and I'm from Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Okay, Brooklyn, do you know who Jackie Robinson is? And if you do, what is his significance?
Yes, he is the first African-American baseball player.
Okay, since you know Jackie, do you know who Roy Campanella or Larry Doby are?
No, I do not.
Were you aware black players played in Negro Leagues before they made it into the MLB?
I was not aware.
Okay, after players like Jackie made it into the MLB, do you think they were paid up to par with what their stats and white counterparts received?
Well, I would say that since integration was still fresh, that their pay was used as a way to discriminate.
Okay, after all these steps that have been taken towards equality since then, do you believe racism still exists in baseball?
No.
All right, what's your name?
Caroline.
Your grade?
Freshman.
Your major?
Kinesiology.
And where are you from?
Lexington.
Okay. Would you believe me if I told you that there's still racist-based wage discrimination in the MLB today?
No.
Who would you consider to be the best African-American baseball player of all time?
Jackie Robinson.
Do you know who Larry Doby was?
No.
Do you think racism is still a problem in sports today?
No.
What is your name? Where are you from? What's your major? And what's your grade?
My name is Sean Kerwin. I am a sophomore. My major is secondary education, history, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky.
All right, Sean. Would you believe me if I told you that there's still racial-based wage discrimination in the MLB today?
Yes.
Who would you consider the best African-American baseball player of all time?
Probably to be Jackie Robinson.
Do you know who Larry Doby was, Satchel Paige or Rory Campanella?
I know who Satchel Paige was.
What do you think happened to the African American players that weren't able to transition from the Negro Leagues to the MLB?
I guess since they couldn't really do anything else, they either played Negro Leagues or had to go find something else to do with their lives.
And lastly, do you think there's still a racial problem in sports today?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
After listening to these interviews and analyzing participant responses, it becomes very aware that students today do know who Jackie Robinson is, but don't have much knowledge on where he and other baseball legends came from, as well as the hardships they had to endure. One of the hardships they went through were unfair pay gaps. African American players were very underpaid for their skills. In the Wisdom Project podcast that inspired our research, a Negro League team owner, Effa Manley, made the Indians MLB team promise baseball legend Larry Doby at least a $5,000 a year salary. Meanwhile, in 1950, the average salary, including bench warmers, was $13,000, and the highest paid player, Hal Newhouser, made $70,000. This is significantly less than Larry's promised $5,000 salary, yet he put up all-star numbers and Hall of Fame caliber play that put players that made more than him to shame. Now, while their pay was significantly less, their job was considerably harder. African American players were harassed daily at their place of work, while white fans constantly mocked players from the stands. Players had to listen to racial slurs and even death threats in the middle of the game. And even if they could block out the sounds from the crowd, racist signs were rampant across the stadium. With all of this hate speech coming at them, players were forced to hold their tongue, and even before Jackie entered the MLB, the team recruiting him asked him if he could keep his calm in the face of all the hate. African American baseball players have come a long way in their journey into America's pastime. Aside from everyday life's racial divisions during the 1900s, they had to work in different leagues separated solely on the color of their skin. Even when they achieved a victory towards equality by getting into the Major League Baseball, their victory was short-lived. Their pay was reduced, driven on hate for skin color, and they had to hold their tongues while hate speech and death threats were yelled at them on the field. With all that being said, many would assume that America and baseball have moved past these racial discrepancies. And our interviews with UK students would show that many do actually believe that. Sadly, however, this is not the case. Racism still exists in many forms with baseball today. Blatant examples of racism still pop up throughout the league, and for example, in the following clip, in 2017, player Yuli Gurriel made a slant eye gesture towards a Japanese pitcher he hit a home run on.
Should we homered off of in the game. Yuli Gurriel, the 33-year-old Cuban-born player for the Astros. Darvish called it disrespectful. But he says everyone makes mistakes. How about Astros manager A.J. Hinch?
These gestures directly resemble the kind of racism players faced in the 1900s, but many claim that racial slurs are not yelled at players during games anymore. Now, while this may mostly be true, it still happens today, and Adam Jones recently addressed racial slurs he experienced at Fenway Park in the following clip.
Same thing happens. Ladies singing the national anthem. White man, mixed kid, black man. And one of the guys said the lady really inwarded her way through the national anthem.
It's not just these voices in the stands you hear during the game, but tweets, comments, and messages you receive constantly from people all over the world. Not only do players today receive racial comments from the spectators, but sometimes even their own team. It has been reported widely across the MLB that some team coaches and staff even shout racist remarks at players during practices, and to me, the fact that this kind of racism exists at all in 2018 is very disturbing, and America has taken notice. In 2017, a banner stating, quote, "Racism is as American as baseball," end quote, was shown during an MLB game. This banner went viral, making a statement that racism has long been in baseball and the existence of it continues. Our goal in this research has been the same as this banner: shed light on baseball's racism, and understand the history behind it so we can take the necessary steps to reach equality in not only baseball, but America as a whole.